Thank you so much. Good morning to all my colleagues on stage and off stage. And I have to begin, first of all, by thanking Professor Padhi. And this is the only opportunity I'm going to get. So I have to thank Professor Padhi and also the entire organizing committee of National Media Conclave. I need to thank all the panelists. Prior to this panel, the last 2 days, I want to thank all the paper presenters whose papers I heard yesterday. All this has been a very enriching experience for me. In fact, so much so that I had prepared my PowerPoint presentation and everything when I came here. And I thought I was very well prepared. That's what I thought, and yesterday I went and I scrapped it all. I scrapped it because I was very comfortable in the known, and then I became a little uncomfortable in the unknown. So when you become uncomfortable in the unknown and unknown becomes known, you have to work all over again. Searching and sorting. These were the two words that a panelist uttered yesterday, and that's exactly what we do in journalism, don't we? And that's also what we do in academia. In fact, searching, news selection, gathering, all those things, sorting, production, news writing, everything. This is our major work. If, according to the panelist yesterday, if AI has interfered with this part, then it has really made a dent. And this, in both journalistic and academic processes, perhaps augmented it for us. Not just made a dent and augmented it, just turned the shift, right? I want to give quick examples. The first one is investigation by a Chicago City Bureau, missing in Chicago. This was an investigation that they built a custom AI tool, and they processed 1 million police records for systemic failure in Chicago Police Department. In Venezuela, El País and other members, they mapped illegal gold smuggling across Amazon forests, all through AI systems. In Canada, Toronto Star used AI to collate crime stories. Yesterday, a presenter told us that Deccan Herald and Prajavani and these newspapers, they used AI long time back, 6 years ago actually, with their own custom-built program. They checked their performance through that. And AI news anchor Lisa right here, is the first one to welcome us to Bhubaneswar as we get down from our flight. So it's here, it's all over here. What you can see is a multi-pronged usage of AI, very prevalent. Recognize that we can estimate audience preference, we can optimize engagement, fact-checking and verification, comment moderation, response suggestion, use of image, graphic, everything, mitigating bias and supporting research. These are all the things that, I gathered yesterday and I learned, All these processes require a human in the loop. They require a human. And this human is the one that guided, helped, constructed them, right? And made out whatever from their results. So you need that person, right? Sir said that we can be optimistic, critical, cynical. I can be all of them. I can be all of them at the same time because every fact, gives me an opportunity to be any one of them. So as an educator, I'll begin with my concerns and then perhaps move on to more pleasant areas because now we are looking at the enormity of it all, and we are looking at it in context of how we are going to introduce our students into it, right? So that's where we are. So there was this recent example which I discussed with a panelist the other day. It was about this US student who was using Gemini and how Gemini cursed him. So it scared the wits out of the boy. And his sister was in the room and she said, I felt like throwing all my gadgets out of the window. This is what she expressed. Evolving media always comes with problems. It always comes with some kind of discomfort, right? But getting scolded and cursed by a machine is not what our students really need, and that's not a part of it. Gen Z is already fighting many issues, and they can, this trauma can be avoided. So this is one of the first things that, made me a little worried, and there are many more. AI hallucinates. all of us know that AI hallucinates, and we know that now even more. Our students may not verify and may not have the ability to discern when it does. So that could be one issue. Commercial interests prioritize profits over genuine educational concerns. For instance, when asked if AI could go sentient, industry professionals, they agree, but they also dismiss it. However, as an educator, I would worry. To answer my own question, sentience has several views, but many pundits, they claim that not more than 10 years for AI to go sentient, including Sam Altman. He's CEO of OpenAI. He said it is possible in the near future. Now, it's a subjective term. We don't know what near future is, but sentient is going to happen. That's what he believes. So that's another area. Loss of human interaction. See, my students, everybody uses ChatGPT, we know that. So they would just pick up a topic from the syllabus and they would put it on ChatGPT, and ChatGPT would turn out like 200 pages and they would try to make sense out of it. So education is not about collecting lot of data, reams and reams of pages from some computer program. It is the teacher the human in the loop, who actually tells what of that syllabus, what of that entire content is part of what they should be learning. So here, the students who are not clear about their purpose may actually be misled with all that information that they can churn out. About equal access, the concerns are there. Equal access has always been an issue. Not all students will always be equally adaptable to all the technology. We know in our classes, even now, some students can write better, some students can use the computer program better, some can design better, right? So it'll be the same problem even later. Some will use AI, some will misuse AI, and some will outrightly abuse AI. So there'll be all types coming forward, right? Media products are very subjective in their objectivity, and they leave a lot of scope for interpretation. So with so much of bias seeping into the content that comes through the AI, are our students ready to reinterpret? Because AI has already interpreted it for them. So are they ready to reinterpret, to argue with the content that they get from the AI? We need to prepare them for that, to be able to, even deny what they are getting from the AI that they come. So, but most of our students, as of now, what I feel is that they are happy that somebody else is writing their dissertation for them, or, writing their answers for them. So they need to be, worked on a lot, and it should be part of our syllabus to how to train them for this. Oversimplification, homogeneity, and a perpetual standardization is what I'm seeing as things go further, because everybody is using the same packages and getting the same data, the same information, the same bias, right? Furthermore, commodification and ethical conflicts. I will not elaborate on this, we know this. Notwithstanding, maximizing potential without creating stifling echo chambers is our responsibility. I gathered in yesterday's panel discussion that personalization grows and grows. The more personalization grows, the diversification we have been striving for, the variety or plurality of viewpoints that we have been fighting for are going to be thrown out of the window, either be thrown out of the window or put in a very, very tight filter bubble, So in that case, responsibility of media educators is vast, right? So this is like a turning point, let's say. So our job is to make them think. And like Sir just said, logic and inquiry. That's what we need to inculcate in them. Yeah. So I would say that, the famous 5 Ws and 1 H that we have, the 4 Ws can be tackled by Gen AI. Let's do the what, when, where, who. But let the teachers do the hows and the whys properly, right? Let not the student ask Gen AI the hows and the whys. And so we'll keep the inquiry and, logic with us so that we can interpret and help them interpret it. So for the purpose of, like I said, for the purpose of the first 4 Ws, we need to train them. We need to train them to give the right prompts, to ask the correct questions. For that also they need training. For example, I did this little experiment with the ChatGPT. I gave it a story, a set of facts, and I asked it to write a story in inverted pyramid. But for that, slowly I kept on changing the prompt. So in the first prompt, I said, write it in inverted pyramid. It wrote very long. Then I gave it the number of words. Then it decreased. Then I gave it block paragraphs. It made block paragraphs. Then I gave it keywords for every paragraph. It made keywords for every paragraph. By the end of fifth attempt, I had a very nice inverted pyramid with shuffleable block paragraphs and required keywords. But to give all those prompts, I need to know my theory. I've used the easiest example, but I need to know it, right? I need to say, do this. So that is what we need to teach then, right? Then for the rest of it, we can't ask it to give us reasons because of the very, very big reason that we already know, that it hallucinates. It hallucinates, it makes up. Even in the story, in the set of facts that I asked, the AI hallucinated and made up quotes. So I told him / her / it, whatever you want to call him. I said that you are lying, or you are wrong, you are mistaken. So it says, yes, I'm sorry. This is made up. It agreed. So it's honest that way. But then we need to know. We need to know and catch it where it is making up a quote. It'll make up. So students have to be very, very careful about that, But we can use the real-time analytical tools. It'll help us in our digital storytelling. VR, AR, AI can create great tools for immersive learning. It's wonderful for specially abled students. I have a visually impaired student in my class, and she dares to come into this profession because she is assisted by so many tools. So it's very good for them. And yesterday's session also, told us about Bhashini app, and Sir also just discussed Bhashini app. I feel so optimistic about it because now our students can be journalists in 22 languages, just by studying one. So really, it's going to take us very far. And so I quickly downloaded the app and I experimented with it also. For teachers, the use of AI is unimaginable, and it is so heartening because it's a lot of work that it can do for us. Automated grading system, administrative tasks that suck the blood out of young faculty, that is so difficult, can be done by AI. And like the Honorable Vice Chancellor said on the first day, it is already being done. So that's there. Performance analysis of students. Curriculum development, we can actually see curricula from all over the world to develop ours. Collating and analysis of data, both academic and administrative. It can do all those things, but what it cannot do, it cannot replicate the intrinsic motivations from personal connection with teachers. It cannot do that. Teachers shall always be there, acting as humans in the loop, right? If a student has a problem, then the mentor has to be a teacher. So this loop is getting tighter and tighter, but having a human helps, because it is after all human intelligence that created artificial intelligence. So human in the loop. Going forward, I want to cast an eye on a very important aspect, which is media research. Let me first clarify, research using AI is rather common. The number of dissertations that AI is writing is not even funny anymore, right? And earlier we started using the plagiarism detecting tools in last decade. But that's so last decade, right? Because now we have AI detecting tools. The thing is that we are not here in the business of outsmarting our students. I've had cases I've seen where teachers give an assignment with one instruction in white font. You know what that means? For instance, write an essay on stereotypes. That's in black. And then there'll be one line in white font saying, you have to include Walter Lippmann's name 15 times. Now, the students who actually sit down and read up Walter Lippmann's famous essay will quote him only once or maybe twice, right? But those who put it in ChatGPT Because ChatGPT does not, the white font does not bother him. Naked eye cannot see the white font. It'll read the white font and it'll say, oh, I have to quote Lippmann 15 times. So the person who has written it with ChatGPT will write Walter Lippmann 15 times and you can count, right? Now, that's a way of outsmarting. Okay, tumne use kiya, pakad liya, dekha. That's not what we are doing, right? I don't agree, but this is what is being done. So this is not we are meant to be doing. We are meant to be teaching them to understand that ChatGPT is not writing better than you. If you read Walter Lippmann's essay, you just have to quote him once and you can do it. So that's the idea. But this is being done. So the tools, plagiarism checking and all this, I'm not so much in favor of that. But then they are there. Yes, yeah, we can use them. But we keep the decision making in research in our own hands and we carry out our own research. I have some quick list of tools. Cite, it analyzes citations. Chat PDF summarizes PDFs and extracts information. Research Rabbit helps to find research papers and explore new topics. Scholarly helps in screening literature review. Connected Papers helps in creating visual maps of literature review. Then there is Perplexity AI. Then there is Julius AI for statistical tools. Elicit is a research search engine. Scopus, it provides a database and tools for researchers. So now, should we ask ChatGPT to write our dissertation? No, we write it ourselves and use all these tools to help us. They'll help us to quicken the process, to make it more organized. It'll help us to maybe more concise in our writing. So we can do that. That's all we need. For example, literature review. See, when you have 120 reviews in front of you and you need to write the literature review in thematic chronology, it's a daunting task. But if you give it the right prompts, it'll create the themes and it'll put it in that order, and it'll put it in chronology very easily. So these are the things we need. Or you want to change the format from APA to Chicago, it'll do it like this. So why not? Why not? So in research, what tools to use, what not to use, when to use AI and when not to use. These are the questions. And these questions will be answered by that human in the loop. No? The supervisor, the teacher, the guide, he's going to ask. Fortunately, we are a generation of learners. All of us, most of us here, we are the original digital natives. And we became digital immigrants, as Sir just quoted Mark Prensky when he talked about digital natives. That's what we are, the original ones. We were introduced to computers through mainframes. And then we started using word processors. And the Professor Gupta is my teacher. I did my dissertation under him. And I typed my dissertation in a very magical word processor that we used to have at that time called WordStar. And in the introduction, I wrote self-typed on WordStar, like I'd done something so great. We are that generation. So we've seen so many changes since then, from then and now, right? So we've seen so many innovations and we are seeing this one. Right? It is a path-breaking innovation, but so was printing press, so was television, so was internet. So it is here now. There is a word I have, last thing, the term that I like to use for AI. I want to use my AI as a genius intern. Genius, because it can do things quickly, as per instruction. It can give you a lot of material. It can, follow your instructions very well. It is a genius, but it is an intern. It needs to be trained by you. So it's not your guide, not your teacher, not your boss. Let it always remain an intern and let us coexist with the genius intern. Thank you.